And the controversy surrounding this radical treatment is featured now in Sign On.
Hello, welcome again to Sign On Your Views. In today's programme we'll be focusing on a controversial subject in the deaf community, cochlear implants. Recently the media have given a lot of attention to this issue. They've shown small children being able to hear after being implanted and portrayed the deaf community reacting strongly against it. Many could misconstrue this to mean simply that deaf people are objecting to other deaf people or children wanting to hear and are afraid of their community being wiped out. But this is not the whole story. This week we saw the latest film about cochlear implants. It was shown on Thursday on Channel 4. Here's a brief clip.
I think professionals look at deaf people in a pathological way and don't see deaf cultural values and its language and so on. Deaf people are regarded as a medical problem that needs to be solved. I strongly object to that attitude.
The latest and most controversial development in the treatment of deafness lies under the skin of 4-year-old Ashley McKinnon. Surgeons have already given the cochlear implant, the so-called bionic ear, to hundreds of profoundly deaf children who receive no benefit from conventional hearing aids. The implant gives a partial sense of sound, not normal hearing, but it may provide enough sound to assist the development of speech.
That film will be shown again immediately after our programme with a sign language interpreter and subtitles. As the clip showed, for once, deaf people are given a chance to express their view in a balanced way. But it's still a film aimed at a hearing audience. So what can we do to improve the understanding of those watching the programme as to how some of the issues strike deaf people? Here with Sign On's contribution to the present stage of the discussion is Rachel Bastikar. Often the media coverage of cochlear implants has been full of hype and sensationalism, usually of the miracle cure for deafness variety. Over the past few months we've been talking to a number of people, mostly hearing, with more informed views on cochlear implants. What they have to say may help us to clarify our own ideas on this controversial subject. Dr. Stuart Bloom is Professor of Science Dynamics at the University of Amsterdam. He's also the father of 2 young deaf daughters. He's been researching into the sociological effects of cochlear implants and their possible impact on the deaf community.
I don't think that cochlear implant technology needs to be a threat to the deaf community. There are plenty of people for whom it has undoubted benefit. Largely speaking, people who become deaf in later life and have used spoken language for most of their lives have enormous profit from it. It doesn't make sense to see the implantation of these people as a threat to the future of the deaf community. The risk, the problem is with the kids. And again, I think part of the reason why it's threatening is partly that people just don't know very much, and partly the kind of overselling of the technology which is taking place for a whole lot of reasons, and which is arousing all kinds of expectations and fears, none of which have much to do with what cochlear implants have been proven to do. They don't make deaf children hearing children, but sometimes it's claimed in public that they do, and that arouses false expectations for parents and false worries from the deaf community who thinks that there will be no more deaf children to nourish it in the future.
It's these false expectations that increase fears. That explains a lot of the anger among deaf people. To understand, we need to know something about our history. Deaf people have faced oppression for centuries. In 1880, the infamous Second Congress on Education of the Deaf was held in Milan, Italy. Resolutions passed at that Congress had a great impact on the education of deaf children throughout the world for the next 100 years. Its effects can still be seen today. Before Milan, it was widely accepted that deaf people could do anything apart from speak. But that was exactly what most of the hearing educators at Milan wanted deaf people to do, produce speech. So they passed resolutions banning sign language in schools and imposing the oral approach. The results of this left many of us illiterate, still unable to speak like hearing people, and generally worse off. Deaf people were left de-skilled and dependent on the paternalistic goodwill and help of hearing people. Alexander Graham Bell is world famous as the inventor of the telephone. What's not so well known is that his mother was deaf, he married a deaf woman, and it was in attempting to produce a miracle aid for her that he ended up with the telephone. Since then, every 10 or 20 years, we've seen some new, better, more advanced, miraculous hearing aid or other that was supposed to be the complete answer to the problem of deafness. But deaf people have gone on being badly educated, disadvantaged and dependent. The cochlear implant is seen by many deaf people as simply another attempt to find a medical cure for deafness. Richard Ramsden is a consultant otolaryngologist at Manchester Royal Infirmary. Like many doctors and surgeons involved in cochlear implants, he emphasises that he doesn't see his work as being a threat to the deaf community.
Well, I would like to reassure the deaf community that we are not trying to implant every deaf person in the country. Cochlear implantation is one method of rehabilitating some totally deaf people. There are, however, a large number of people who are not suitable for cochlear implantation. We as a team respect the values of the deaf community. We recognise that the deaf community provides invaluable help and support to our deaf patients. At the same time, we have to recognise that the cochlear implant is a revolutionary and effective means of treating some deaf people.
But which deaf people does Richard Ramsden mean? If it's adults like Jack Ashley who have lost their hearing and want to recover some of it, most deaf people could have no objection. They're adults and can decide for themselves. But more and more deaf children are also being implanted.
There are two groups of children that we have implanted. There are those who have spoken, have heard earlier in life and have lost their hearing, and these children do very well. We have a little boy who's just learned to speak French using his implant. We also have implanted one or two pre-lingually deaf children. These are a very major challenge, but the experience from other centres in the world is that with intense rehabilitation, these children will do well. I accept that, as with many things that we do for our children, we have to make decisions on their part, whether it's to do with educational or moral matters and health matters. And I think we have to face up to the responsibilities we have to make these decisions for our children.
But who exactly is we? Deaf children are at the mercy of a whole host of medical people who think they know what's best for them. The pressure on parents to decide while the child is still young is tremendous. Doctors argue that children have to be implanted before the age of 5 or 6, or the part of the brain that responds to sound will never develop. Hearing parents will naturally hope that their children can grow up as much like them as possible. But how can they make a properly informed decision? Stuart Bloom is a parent as well as a scientist. If any parent should be well informed, you'd think it would be him.
I think far too little is known about the effects of the implants. I have two congenitally deaf children, so I always have a personal as well as scientific interest in this. I think that we don't know much more than that the children hear a little bit more. They get some decibels of hearing extra, that's sure. But what that does to them, whether it makes them more able to learn spoken language, whether it enables them to learn spoken language in a fairly natural way, nobody knows. Nobody knows what effect it has on their emotional development, or their intellectual development, or their friendships, their happiness, their school progress. Almost none of these things are being studied. So what I feel is that the urgent question is that we begin to investigate these things systematically. We can't make decisions on the basis only of audiological information. That's what I feel most strongly. I don't think I know enough as a parent to be able to decide, and I've read all the literature.
Yet parents who know very little about science, medicine or the deaf community are expected to make the right decisions for their child. The other aspect of the cochlear implant that angers many deaf people is how much it takes up in terms of money, which they feel could be better spent. It's not only the operation, but all the backup and rehabilitation that has to go with the implant.
The surgery really is a relatively simple part of cochlear implantation. The operation is straightforward. It takes about 2 hours, and it's the sort of ear operation that should be within the capabilities of any ear surgeon. The time in hospital is around 5 days, and during that time the patient has a big bandage on the head. About a month later, the patient comes back to start the process of rehabilitation, and that process varies in length considerably depending on the individual patient, depending on the duration of that patient's deafness perhaps, and depending on the age of the patient at the time he or she lost his hearing.
The cochlear implant operation itself can cost about £6,000 for a child. But when you add the device at £14,000 and the rehabilitation process, which can go on for about 12 years, the total can exceed £50,000. We feel that the money could be better spent on education, interpreter services, and better visual technology, which could help the child to absorb information. With the cochlear implant, the pressure to emphasize those very things which have done so much damage in the past will always be there.
The danger is that interests in oral education will claim that implanted children have to be in an oral environment in order to profit from their implants. I don't think that's true, but these claims are made, and because there's no proof one way or the other, it's very difficult to have a very sensible argument. So I think implanted children will continue to need sign language and will continue to need a strong and dynamic deaf community.
The collective medical obsession with hearing distracts people from the positive values of deaf culture, deaf identity and sign language. In Sweden, not only the deaf community, but also parents have been much more cautious about cochlear implants. In the last 15 years, they've concentrated more on good education and cultural development. Their government has recognized Swedish Sign Language as an official language. The results? Young deaf people leaving schools in Sweden have much better levels of literacy and other skills. The reintroduction of signing in British schools can have the same benefits, and that's where deaf people would like to see more resources. But because we're not allowed to be equal in making the decisions that affect our lives, it's hearing people who decide the priorities. After the break, we meet two hearing parents who have given their deaf child sign language as well as a cochlear implant.
Can I have a biscuit?
Can have lots. One is enough though. Thank you. Daddy, and then me with Alex. Both of you.
No.
One end here.
Whatever misgivings deaf people may have about cochlear implants, one thing we mustn't do is reject the children who receive them, or do anything to make them feel rejected. That's the quickest way to lose some of the gains we've been making over the past 15 years. Deaf people are gradually becoming accepted in society as a cultural and linguistic minority. We have fought for and achieved many things, but there's still a long way to go. If we want to win the war for complete acceptance, we need allies, especially in the parents of deaf children. In Sweden, it's the strong links between the deaf community and parents that have helped to achieve so much. Parents want the very best for their children, and so do we. If we want to be allies rather than adversaries, we need to talk to them about the concerns we share. We need to win their trust and show them that we're not just a bunch of angry people. That's the only way they'll come to respect us and think about our point of view, why we feel the way we do, and what advice we can offer from our own experience that will help them bring up their deaf children. That's why we went to see Billy and Andrew Tribe and their 3 children. Their middle child, Nicholas, is deaf, and they opted for a cochlear implant, but they are also open to the value of sign language.
Thank you. It's greedy. You have one. Sarah's got nothing. Please. I like these. Uh-oh.
Two. Nicholas, at the front or at the back?
Nicholas became deaf following meningitis 2.5 years ago. Initially, when he was diagnosed as being deaf, the local professional people came in and told us just to carry on as before, and he would then begin to understand us and start to speak, and we would carry on family life as we had before. But it became very obvious very quickly that this wasn't going to happen. So at this point we decided, in fact we found we had to research this for ourselves, and we rang the BDA, the RNID and the NDCS. But we also spoke to 2 other people, and that was the Aphasic Society and the Royal College of Speech Therapists, and they gave us a very invaluable piece of information at that time, and that was, don't wait. If you wait, it would be too late, because then Nicholas would have lost any language he'd acquired, his concentration skills and his social interactive skills. So we knew then that we had to do something to help Nicholas, and we realised our problem was one of communication. So once we understood that, we then decided to have a good look round how to communicate with him, and that's when we decided that sign language was what we had to use with Nicholas.
200? Never. I've never seen a tadpole or a frog with 200 legs. No.
We learnt sign language so that we had a means of communication with our son. We found that just by sitting and talking to him, all he would do was sit and copy back. So if we looked happy, he would look happy. If we'd said some words, he would sit there like a goldfish in a bowl and just back to us. So we didn't have a means of communication. Signing gave us that. And within 10 minutes of him actually being shown his first signs, he used it, and we never ever looked back. Within a matter of 3-4 weeks, we didn't have the temper tantrums, the misunderstandings. We got our little boy back that we knew before he went deaf. It was actually more difficult to decide on the implant because we now had a means of communication. The problem that we found was that as a family we could communicate with Nicholas, but outside our family we didn't know enough people that actually signed. We still don't. So we decided to give him the opportunity of a cochlear implant so that it would expand his social group of people that he knew, he could talk to, understand. We've still maintained signing and use that all the time with him. So we now have a dual, both oral and signing, that we use at all times.
Nicholas uses British Sign Language. He uses facial expression, he uses lip patterns, and he copes as well without his processor almost as he does with his processor. All he's lost is the oral side of it. When he does have it off, at night time, bath time, that sort of thing, he switches straight into British Sign Language structure and format. And when he has got it on, he uses a more English-based format, but still using sign to supplement it.
I particularly like his signing because I think it's so beautiful, it's natural. His oral language is wonderful as well. He responds to his name when we call him, to the person who's actually called him. As far as it goes in school, he's fully integrated into school. He's reading, he's writing, he's doing his arithmetic, he's sitting down for his spelling tests. Everything that any child of that age should be doing, he is doing. And it's beyond belief. At first we just thought he might hear a few environmental sounds, and he's really progressed on from that and doing everything he should be.
Nicholas, go to the park. Can we drive home? Yes?
Can all of us have McDonald's?
No. Tomorrow, maybe. Come on, then.
The sign language is absolutely key. It was vital, because without having the language to communicate to Nicholas, we could not possibly teach him how to use his implant and to get the best use of it. Also, for the majority of things at the moment, reading, writing, new words, new situations, we do it all in sign, because sign is the language that he understands best, and that can then be changed into English, translated into English for him. But without having the background communication of sign language, we couldn't teach him these things.
We were lucky that we met Jane Beach. She told us and informed us and took us to places. We went to the Festival of Deaf Culture at Derby. So through her, we did meet a lot of her acquaintances and friends. But as for locally, what was here, we haven't really found that adults have actually come forward and helped us too much. We've actually now had an invitation to go to the Deaf Club in Lincolnshire. It happened 3 weeks ago. Now that's the first time after 2.5 years of trying to be involved. If at diagnosis there was somebody there who was deaf, who could introduce us, not enforce us to actually do all, to be involved with the deaf community, but introduce us so we could make our own informed decision, that would be great.
An informed decision, that's what the parents want. And that's in the best interests of the deaf community as well. As many people have said, including doctors and consultants, a child with a cochlear implant is still a deaf child and will grow up into a deaf adult. Recently in Nottingham alone, 57 deaf children have received cochlear implants. That's one for every 1,000 members of the deaf community in Britain. Whatever we think of the technology, however suspicious we are of autism, hearing attitudes imposed on deaf people, these children are potential members of our community. We need to demand more independent research into the effects of cochlear implants. We must demand that deaf people have an input into that research. But, above all, we need to help the children who are our future members, who will grow up into deaf adults like us. We need to accept them, teach them sign language and welcome them into our community and not reject them. Rachel, thank you. We hope what you've seen will be useful in helping you to understand the issues when you watch Silence is Golden, which will be shown immediately after this programme. Next Thursday at 8 o'clock in the evening, there's another People First programme about deaf children on Channel 4. It looks in more depth at the importance of sign language to these children. You can watch the programme with teletext subtitles on 888, or you can watch it again next Saturday with a sign language interpreter and subtitles immediately after the Sign On at Leisure programme with John Wilson and myself. Bye-bye. Bye.